I received a request that is very interesting, specifically about how to create a rhythmic loop that produces a bell sound on beats 2 and 4. There are several options for this, and I would like to show you two of them today. One is the drum track in the performance, if you don't need it for the click, and how it all works with the HD1 engine using the wavesequencer. Have fun with it. We will start with the drum track example, and for that, we will first go into an initial combination. We will first go into the drum track, which I have explained elsewhere, and see that it is running on MIDI channel 02. Then we select a preset, which I had already thought about. It will be a rock preset because I know that the snare works well on beats 2 and 4. We will leave the mode set to start immediately so that it starts right away when we press the start button, and we will set sync to on. Then we select a drum set in timbre 2 because that is currently MIDI channel 02 for me, so we can also hear what is happening there. We can hear now that the snare plays evenly on beats 2 and 4, while the bass drum plays on beats 1 and 3. However, we have a break with the bass drum in all 4 measures, so there is a double bass once. That means we are now focusing on the snare. Of course, you can also create a user drum track and a user pattern. I will show that elsewhere. This bypasses the problem with the break. Now we need to check which note the snare is on. For this, we go into the MIDI filter zone area and take a look at the zones, restricting them to test it. I now know that it must be somewhere around the dis, but unfortunately not around the dis 2. So let's head towards the 3 and see if it happens there. Okay, so somewhere underneath that, now we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and now. We only have the 2 and the 4. The user's wish was to have a bell on beats 2 and 4, so let's now choose any random bell sound instead of the drum track and see what happens. Since we are now only in the keyboard area of the snare, the bell now sounds on beats 2 and 4. You can of course transpose it cheerfully if you don't like the sound, or simply choose a different sound. This only works, of course, if I don't need the drum track for other purposes, like accompaniment, or as a click track, as I do for our drummer. That's why I'm now going to show you another variant with the wavesequencer. We go into global mode, then exit to this view and select wave sequence. Then we choose an empty user wave sequence. In a new video, we will go over the wave sequencer again. Specifically, we will first select loop end step 4, and also set the wave sequence to end step 4. Because I want to have steps 1 to 4. Then I switch to the step parameter tab, lower the volume, that is the level of steps 1 and 3 because I only want 2 and 4, and click on tempo in the top right corner so that I have a tempo unit and not a time unit, and change the length to a quarter note. Of course, I can also choose any other note length and naturally select more steps if I need more or different combinations. My loop will now actually sound on beats 2 and 4, and I can just now literally select a wave file here. I'm just going to take a sound as an example here. Of course, you can choose whatever you want. Of course, it makes sense to do this on the active beats and not on those that won't sound anyway. I'll just go ahead and do this for all 4. Now you can hear the sound I have chosen, always on beats 2 and 4. To clarify this again, I will now choose a piano for beats 1 and 3. A bit clearer again. Now I obviously have the option to select these monorom samples that I just showed you. Then I can also select stereo samples. However, I can also choose my own samples. Right now I don't have any so I can't show you that. Or the samples from all the EXS variants. Now we remove the 1 and the 3 again because we don't need them. Only the 2 and the 4. Then we save everything to an empty memory slot that we can easily remember. What I unfortunately haven't shown now is that it makes sense to start from a program whose sound we want to use later and to check which sample is being used there. Then I can use the same sample in the wave sequence and then insert it back into this sound, that is, into the program. I will now simply take an example program to show this. You can of course use the one where you selected the sound, as mentioned. I will take an initial program now. Then I go to OSC pitch. Here I can also see the sample that I used. Then go to wave sequence and select the wave sequence under user that I created earlier. The sound is now naturally available on every key. When I use the program in the performance, I will need to restrict it accordingly. If I want to have a loop, I go to basic vector and click on hold. Now the sound is playing as a loop. Yes, that would have been the second option. Then there is also the option to use the step sequencer, which I have already shown in another video and will link again at the end. One could solve the whole thing through sampling, but then I am tempo dependent and cannot change the tempo anymore. I think you can't go wrong with the wave sequencer.